son, he has a tendency to get more sinus colds. And what he does, he puts his face in the snow. He only gets sinus colds like maybe once or twice a year. And he puts his face in the snow. And so much mucus comes out. So he continues that until his sinus cold leaves. Crazy.
Because that, again, that primal fire, that Agni, that is again linked to sense of smell, like what smells good. It's linked to eyesight, what looks good, to tongue, what tastes good, to touch, what like feels good, you know, to bring into my body. It's like that will wake up there. That's intelligence. That's the Veda of Ayurveda. That's the Vidya, the living wisdom. It's Kate Stillman with the Thrive with Kate podcast, and I'm here with Mama Lynne Talifer, who has been on the path with me for a while on all things yoga, health coaching, primal, Ayurveda, and detox. And so we decided we would do a podcast episode on what this is like with families, because Lynne's a mom of 3, I'm a mother of 1, and where does this path come from in terms of our deep plunge into circadian rhythm habits and adversity habits, and coming from a background in Ayurveda and yoga, and like how is it kind of filtering through our families, and what is this, I would say, like turn of the wheel, like this real spin of the wheel of evolution that happens as families naturally go more primal. And what does that mean from the lived perspective as individuals, and then also from, because we're both coaching members in Club Thrive, and Lynne's also coaching members in her wellness business in Canada. Like, how does it actually, you know, go beyond the individual and into how I see like women on the edge of wellness? It starts to spread through our families and spread through culture as a greater population. So that's a little bit of my little intro overview. Where do we want to start, Lynne?
I don't know. I would go back to like me before being a mom.
Okay, let's start
How
there.
it started for me.
Yeah. Go for it.
For sure. And I mean, you were talking about just at the intro, just talking about like the instinctual path about it. And that's how it started for me. I remember just living on a farm. Well, I grew up on a farm first off. So I was eating seasonally. My mom was feeding me seasonally. She was giving me castor oil twice a year, you know, time to do our little cleanse, you know, and that was her way of cleaning us up, or, you know.
She's like French Canadian, like this is like old French Canadian. Yep.
Yeah, and she was actually talking to me about the other day. She's like, you know, your grandma was a herbalist. I mean, she wasn't certified or anything, but that's how she healed us. That's how she took care of her whole family, and she had 13 kids. And that's where my mom learned everything. So coming from that, and then anyways, for me moving out west to British Columbia, living on an organic farm, I just noticed how plants affected me throughout the seasons and how different vegetables were available to me. And I started taking notes, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I showed one of my girlfriends, look what I'm learning about nature and its effects on me and with its seasons. And she said to me, she's like, oh, that's Ayurveda. And I'm like, what's that? Serious. That's how Ayurveda came into my life. I had no freaking clue.
Yeah.
You know, waking up early for me was just always like part of my routine for so long. And I was like, Ayurveda. And I started looking it up, and I was like, sweet. Like, I have less work to do.
I have less work to do. It's all here.
I know. I thought I had a really big job ahead of me. I was like, so for myself, like, that's how I kind of see my health, my wellness on all levels in regards to either seasonally, daily, through my habits, and through how nature affects me. And then that's when I dove further into Ayurveda. And so I already had that like knowledge, if you want, that desire to to be well, but naturally. It was just easy. It was just easy for me to go that way. It wasn't that I was against the medical system. It wasn't like, oh, I don't want to go that way. It wasn't that. It was like, oh, well, nature works. Like, all right, I'll do whatever I got. I have hemorrhoids. I will do whatever I got to do. And that's how I'll set my daily life to take care of myself, to heal myself, to prevent, if you want. And then I had kids. And I've always knew that I was gonna have kids. I mean, that's, my nickname is Mama Lynne. It was kind of like written on my forehead that I was gonna have kids. So
Were you Mama Lynne before you had kids?
yeah, way before. My crew always called me that. Yeah,
because you naturally had that like mothering tendency or instinct or what?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like having my kids, and through Ayurveda and then also with you, Kate, I really got a good handle on like how to, and I went through the phase of like being super rigid. It's going this way. This is how it's working, and crashing and being like, okay, can't do it that way. And even in what Mark Douillard's, John Douillard's book, like Perfect Health for Kids,
yeah.
He talks about it in there that you need a flexible mind. You need to be flexible. And that only came for myself later on. Like my ex-partner was just like, you need to slack off. And I really did. And that allowed me to open the door for my kids to experience their health their own way. Because that's the best way you can learn. A girlfriend always told me that. Like, the only way that we are going to learn is through our own experience, is through our own trial and errors, right? Errors, more knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the big questions that comes up is like, where does Ayurveda intersect primal? So for those listening who don't know Ayurveda, this is the healing science from India. Ayur means life, Veda is knowledge or study, to know. And so this wisdom tradition, it's a living wisdom tradition, this knowing of life and what works, and it's a bit of like a how to live to optimize who you are as a human being and who you are as a unique individual in terms of your dharma, but also who you are as in terms of like the species and what makes our species thrive, part of which is circadian rhythm habits. And in my first book, in Body Thrive, I felt like I was writing the book that someone else should have written because it was
I totally agree.
like, seriously, no one's written this one in the modern context yet. Like, it's which is just basically circadian rhythm for yogis, for modern people who are into yogic philosophy, to understand how that circadian rhythm, how it's in the philosophy, it's in our awareness. I love how what you described was Ayurveda. It's like it's in every healing tradition. It's like it's just a study of nature at some level. It's just a recognition of this is we are nature. Nature isn't outside of us. We are nature. That nature works through us. We are nature. Nature is in us. It's in every cell of our body. And the more we tune in, the more we get out of our lives. Like really, the more we tune in, the more better, the more easier it is to live and to thrive. And part of which there's a natural tendency human beings have towards, when we're in tune, towards the habits that enable us to do great things with our lives and into our dharma, our unique purpose. And the more disconnect we have within ourselves, within our bodies, the more disconnect we have in community, in relationship, and the more we get stuck in in an ego, whether that, and I don't mean like big ego or small ego, it's just we get more identified with the self sense, and we lose that we're part of the bigger whole. We lose the connection of who we are, that we're stardust embodied. We lose deep time, deep space perspective. We lose the perspective of the the planet's evolving, of being part of a universe and process. We lose that. We get stuck in the all through the day, I, me, my, right? As I think I was correct. I think that's George Harrison from the Beatles who wrote that. We get stuck in that I, me, my, whether that's a I am unworthy or whether it's an everyone else is unworthy of me, like small ego, big ego. It's still the same. It's the same entrapment. Okay, so that was a lot. I'm just going to let that hang out there. And I want to pick up this piece of the community that I built through Body Thrive, that first book, and Yoga Health Coaching, where we used a certification as a model for helping wellness pros teach circadian rhythm habits or guide member communities through circadian rhythm habits. Is our community, and Club Thrive went Primal, and we renamed Body Thrive into Club Thrive when that happened. And a few of us, a bunch of people like peeled out at that point, like the classical, I think people more interested in classical yoga peeled out. And I think the people that were on the whole adventure of like, what's happening, this is really starting to get interesting. We just sort of buckled in and went for the ride. And so I'll just throw a definition out there because I think it's helpful. So to me, primal Ayurveda is what came before the Vedas, like what gave rise to the wisdom tradition of the Vedas. There was something that's already happening. So I think the classicalists would say those are the pre-Vedas, but I'd say this is even like what happened before the pre-Vedas, like what happened before culture that drove human evolution. And I have a book on it called Primal Habits, which is part of another book called The Uninflamed. Both are on Amazon. This idea that there's habits that drove our evolution, that these habits are free, that they're inborn, that we naturally know them if they're not interrupted by culture. If we're not like reprogrammed by culture, these are the habits that humans naturally evolve into and through, and they help us heal from all sorts of imbalance and disease. Okay, was that enough on like Ayurveda and Primal to get everyone up to speed, do you think?
I think so.
Okay, so given that, Mama Lynne, like what happened for you with Ayurveda going more primal for you and your family and your kids, and any specific examples would be great.
One that really stands out is definitely the cold plunging, the cryotherapy. My son is still into it. I'm still, and as I was doing it, I mean, I started because I had a lake on my land. So I was able to just do it even before I knew what it was. It was like, oh, cold water. I like cold. Why not? Let's see what it does. And then being more and more educated about what the benefits are. I'm like, wow, this is great. And then suddenly monkey see, monkey do with kids, right? When they're really young until they become older and they create their own samskaras. Then my kids, well, one of them is more like fragile, his nervous system, more vata, so he's really not into it. He's like, forget about it, mom. And it totally makes sense. So he's following what is naturally there for himself, right? Anyways, my two other ones, which are more kapha, are more earthy, right, in their constitution, they do this with me until November. And even like during the winter, he's like, Mom, when I take a bath in the hot water, I get out and I'm cold. And that sucks. But when I take a cold shower and I get out, I'm hot. And like my daughter's like, Mom, I want more cold water. I want a cold bath. I'm like, you want a cold bath? Okay.
Wow. And what age? So just so people have context, what age?
So my son is 10. Son is 10. That's more like earthy. Like I was saying, my daughter, which is super earthy and super fiery, she's 5.
And when did she first say, I want a cold bath?
Maybe 4 years old, 5, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she swims with me until November in the lake. well, swims. I mean, she goes in, she like gets out,
Yeah.
but it's just it gets that hit of what it is, right?
Our cold plunge, we didn't have the right heater apparatus so that it wouldn't deep freeze this winter. Even though I did a post on the thing, but I lost it for like a week and we went -10 and I haven't been able to bring it back up. Because you can put like 1,000-watt plugger in it so I can keep it right at like 30 degrees so it doesn't
Yeah.
turn into a rock. So we just had snow all winter. And so we would just roll around in the snow, like use the hot tub and with the snow bath. And it's that normalizing it for my teenage daughter, who's pretty kapha, so she's very dense, very strong, very, very strong. She's like her dad, like I mean, I thought I was strong till I met my husband, and then like she's like him. And it puts her so much more in control of how she feels. Cryo, like there's certain adversity habits, there's certain primal habits that they just work so much faster than other habits. So like say exercise is a habit, like to get to the same experience and with cryo, you could get, like if you can't work out that day, like you could have that experience in 2 minutes with cryo, where you can just get that complete anti-inflammation, pro-circulation reset. You feel your tissue shrink, it resets your metabolism. Like it just goes on and on and on. And then you get this huge dopamine surge. You get serotonin. It resets your sleep cycle. So if you struggle with deep sleep, like there's so much that happens in such a short period of time. One of the things that I noticed when we normalized cryo was how many people around me, because you like talk about what you're doing or people notice what you're doing or whatnot, and it's like, oh, I don't like the cold. And I noticed like the people, the more chronic inflammation someone had, the more they were less thermogenic. I'm going to make up a word. Like they have less thermoadaptability.
Interesting.
Meaning can't get cold, can't get warm. So, or don't like to get cold, don't like to be too hot, don't like to be too cold. So it's interesting. We were surfing yesterday. We're down in Mexico and it's a little cool. It's like cool enough that I'm like, I like goosebumps, and my daughter's like, I like being cold. So it's very similar to Blanche, right? To your 4-year-old, 5-year-old, right? He's like, actually, I know that makes me feel good.
For sure. And I would also add one more thing, like one more specific thing that my son, he has a tendency to get more sinus colds. And what he does, he puts his face in the snow because he only gets sinus colds like maybe once or twice a year. And he puts his face in the snow. And so much mucus comes out. So he continues that until his sinus cold leaves. Crazy.
And he figured it out by himself.
Yeah, that was his idea. He'd see me using the neti pot and he'd be like, no way, mom. And I'm like, okay. And, you can get some at the stores, they pump like, they spray salted water in the nose and he just doesn't like that. And I was like, okay, well, we got to find something, right? And he was like, the cold. I was like, okay. So he'd go outside, bare feet, put his face in the snow. Right? And he's 10 now, so he's been through a lot of it, or seeing me go at it, like I said, monkey see, monkey do, but also him experimenting on his own ideas of like how to use what he's learned so far, which I find really fascinating.
It's that return to the instinctual. I mean, we should talk about urine therapy and or Shivambu. So Shiva means God or the divine in the masculine, the awake in the masculine form, like the full potential in the masculine form, the Shiva, and then Ambu is water. So God water is the term for urine therapy. It's the old language, right? The old words for when we use our urine on our body or in our body, and it can go anywhere. It can go in any sense organ. It can go on, it can go anywhere. We can go up the butt, down the hatch. It can go up the nose. It can go in the ears and the eyes. It can go in the skin. It can go up the yoni. So what I've seen with the more the community, like the more individuals in the community have tapped into Shivambu, the more the other habits tend to go primal. Like it seems to be an activator of other primal habits. Seems to me like it's an activator of intuition. What have you found?
In response to urine therapy?
What was your exploration, like initial exploration, and then if you still do it, why do you still do it?
Well, my first experience with urine therapy was when I lived on Hawaii, and the natives there used it if ever they would get cut by coral reefs. And when that happened to me, they just said pee on it, and I was like, oh. So then I started using it on my skin all the time.
Oh wait, no, pause there. Were they using it on their skin all the time, or you just were like, this feels good, or how did that happen?
This feels good. Wow, this heals. Okay, I'll use it. I mean, they were using it specifically when they would get cuts. I didn't really explore more in that respect. But just from the native people saying, oh, well, you should use it on your skin and you won't get inflammation. Obviously, lots of pus came out, and I was like, wow, this is fascinating. So I started using it here and there on my skin in general. And it was through the first interview I think you had with Megan McDonald, where I was like, oh my God, imagine if I put this in my body. Like, what happens if I drink it? So drinking it was like easy and very like obvious to some degree. I'm like, why didn't I do this before? Kind of thing. So ever since then, I think I'll be going on 3 years this year. I've been using it daily. My kids use it all the time. Just on their skin. They pee in a mason jar weekly, and then we use it in their baths. They see a difference in their skin. My daughter was really sick, and it was her idea. She's like, Mom, we should use some more pee in my bath because I'm really sick. I was like, all right, cool. But she's like, I don't want to drink it. Not there yet, right? But ever since I started using it, I don't have any more sinus colds. I used to have chronic 3-4 times sinus colds a year easily. That's where I get sick. I think that's like where my weakness was. And I guess it's been what, been a year now, a year and a half, no sinus colds.
And are you snorting or
Snorting, and specifically in the winter time, I do more neti pot. I do like one neti pot a day. Yeah, I don't miss that ever. And I do my eyes as well. I put some in my eyes, just knowing that my sinuses are behind my eyes, so I do that.
And do you notice that you can breathe better, like just in your sinuses in general? Are you getting more oxygen?
My smell came back.
Oh wow. When did you lose your smell?
I think it was 2016. I remember when I had that big sinus cold, and after that I couldn't smell anything.
Wow. Because I've had clients before Club Thrive. I've had clients that so anosmia. I read a lot on anosmia, which is the loss of smell, when I was writing Uninflamed and writing the chapter on snort and trying to figure out a few funny things like why are the yogis where did neti pot, where did that originate? Was it urine in the first place? And what happens when, because Ayurvedic medicine uses snorting for a lot of different substances. Historically, the way that most Ayurvedic medicine practitioners are taught, both in India, because I've been there, done that, and in the United States, and I've had a really hard time finding Ayurvedic communities that know about aged urine and nausea. And nausea is usually done with it's usually an oil base with different medications in it. And so to me, basically it's like Club Thrive when Primal And I just looked at citizen data. Like we're just a group of people that are doing things, that are experimenting. And it's a data set. It's not a data set. It's not a double blind study because pharmaceutical companies will not study urine therapy because there's no money to be made in urine therapy.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get the funding to do it. So then you just are relying on citizen data. And so the more we did it, I was like, I started to land on like every reference in the Ayurvedic text that's oil used to be aged urine. Like that's really where I landed.
Oh, wow.
Every single, like, do I have any evidence to support this? Like only with citizen data. And then if we ask ourselves, well, why did this happen? Well, culture, and again, this is where Ayurveda goes primal. Culture creates habits, including habits that are disgusting. So that which is that which is labeled by the culture as disgusting in order to control
Separate
population. And so if you can control medicine, and we've seen this a lot, I think particularly in the Americans and almost westernized countries, but like our FDA is particularly been corrupted by the pharmaceutical industry. Maybe second to none globally. Not sure about that, but it's pretty nuts. If we look at like what we call medicine, what a population calls medicine, what your mother called medicine, right, versus what you ask a person right now, like what is medicine? You're going to point to the pharmacy.
Yeah.
Pharmacy, there's a lot of chemicals that have these double-blind studies that have been done. The studies are actually done by the pharmaceutical companies, so that's sort of the joke about it. Okay, so like given all that, when in Ayurvedic medicine did we stop using aged urine as using oil, start using sesame oil? Because whenever that happened, that's when Ayurveda went from primal into this culture of do's and don'ts and rights and wrongs and use this and don't use that, as opposed to a completely intuitive experience where like children would naturally do the things, like your son putting his head in the snow or your daughter peeing in the bathtub without judgment. And so given that, we just tie it back to anosmia, because what we found is like with aged urine, it has such a strong ORP, which is oxidation reduction potential. So it's going to antioxidize the tissue. So if someone's sinuses, you had a weakness in your sinuses, I had a weakness in my sinuses. I had allergies since I was, I don't know, 7. Because that tissue can become fibrotic, right? The oil has no penetration comparable to aged urine. So aged urine can actually penetrate the fibrotic tissue and wake it up. It can start to soften, release the biofilms, allow penetration, allow oxygen to enter cells in the endothelium that otherwise you can't get to. Like it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen with nausea. I don't care how good and expensive and special and guru blessed your nausea is.
I've done that. And they never
People are
realized.
listening to this, they're like, this is crazy. Like, what would you? I kind of feel it's just crazier to live with allergies or take drugs, but like.
Honestly, I never thought I would heal my sinus problem. Like, I don't know what I would have done without my own waters, my own medicine. I really thought I was just stuck with this for the rest of my life. I thought I was stuck with my right shoulder being achy forever for the rest of my life. That too's gone. There's a lot of things. Huh?
What healed that?
I would say like I massaged it regularly with urine. I was doing a lot of hanging too. That was helpful. A lot of hanging, another primal habit too. So I did lots of hanging, lots of massage with the urine. You know, it's all things that I had, which I thought I was stuck with. I was doing nausea for years. I was doing neti pot. I was doing nausea, neti pot, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then suddenly it's like now with the urine therapy is just, there's just like this prevention piece that's there now. That maybe something I don't know, but maybe it's strengthening it too. I'm guessing. I don't know. You know, I'm kind of just letting go and listening.
Yeah. Right. So there's that part where when are you I'm just going to keep coming back to primal Ayurveda, like where we're on that edge of what happened of like before. And I'm not trying to glorify the past, you guys. I just want to be clear. I'm just trying to help us all like optimize for the experience we want to be having in our bodies and with our families, and not be a roadblock to our children discovering their own divine nature and their own ability to heal because of, you know, culture's idea of like what is medicine, what is urine, what is rhythm, when should we go to bed, when should we wake up, that it's like less rule based and it becomes like such a natural, like where we are nature just in sync and in cycle.
I'd like to chime in on that.
Yeah.
What you said specifically about how we can just, you know, let our kids kind of just explore on their own. And I find that there's this, for myself, that's kind of like my motto if we went with my kids, is like there's no guilt behind it. Right or wrong, everything's right. Right. And they decide through their own experience. But there was this one, because now my community knows that I more and more that I do urine therapy. One of my kids started getting bugged at school about it. And that was like heart wrenching for me. I was like, oh, and I told him, I'm like, I am so sorry you're going through this. And you know what he said? He said, Mom, it's not your fault. It's your medicine.
That's the 10-year-old?
Yeah. Even my 9-year-old defends me against my ex. It's hilarious. He was like, my ex was like telling me something about my urine smelling and stuff. And I can hear my son across the whole house. He's like, leave her alone. It's her medicine. She can do what she wants. I was like, yeah, all right. I did something good. But there's like that no guilt piece that I feel like that now that I've given my kids, that they bring on to me. Like, Mom, don't be guilty. This is your medicine. This is what you got.
There's something important about the smell, so anosmia, or loss of smell. So if we've already unpacked that, and I want to get into fasting in a minute. So we're going to get into fasting and intermittent fasting and that in a minute. So for those who are just like, when are they going to get off this UT Shivambu conversation? We will. We'll get there eventually, but then we'll circle back in, just so you know.
We'll call it looping. No.
Yeah, we'll call it looping. Anosmia is the best indicator of, like, the best way to predict when someone will die. There's these tests that test the loss of smell, because there's degrees of loss of smell, and they can predict within the best measure of any other predictor. There's great research on this on anyone who has ResearchGate or any other way that you look at journal publications. Perplexity.io is a great place to start as well. And to me, this is really, really fascinating that, like, we can tell how well someone's doing, especially in old age, by how much loss of smell they have. Now, to me, part of the crazy thing is that there's a smell, there's primal smells. And to me, like, the primal smells are urine and cow dung, right? These smells that we have just an absolute disdain for in Western culture. A disdain, like it's beyond disgust. It's like disgust at the level of disdain. And yet these are the medicine, like it kind of cracks me out. Like, these are the medicines that rehabilitate the microbiomes. I think everybody who's listening to this podcast knows the word microbiome and knows that you're deficient in microbiome and understands dysbiosis to some degree and understands the need for microbial diversity. And what to me is like, there's so many ironies that happen as we go pre-cultural, as we go from culture back to primal. And one of these ironies is that things that smell good to people that have chronic inflammation are like the scentsy or like the false perfumes and whatnot. Things like that, which the more primal you are, you only sense xenotoxins and you can't breathe. Like you don't want to breathe it. You know what I mean? Like you walk into like a Costco bathroom or you're in the airport and they're spraying something. I was in a nursing home. They're like literally spraying things in the air that are xenotoxins. And that just, it creates, it goes, you know, they go in, these toxins go in through the nostrils. They first affect the sinus microbiome. Then they go straight up through the parasinuses, through the cribriform plate, and actually into the cerebrospinal fluid. So does aged urine, like when it's doing the other thing, creates an antioxidizing effect even at the level of the pineal gland. We have this black and white, and we have this paradox of like, this is clean. This is the smell of clean. This chemical toxin is the smell of clean. And that these things are legal with how much damage they do to our brains is like mind-boggling. Like mind-boggling to me. Like, can't get over it. And yet that which heals us, we have disdain for. And we're just stuck in this, like the typical person listening to this is like, there's no way I'm ever doing urine therapy. This is so weird. They're talking about, you know what I mean? There's like, it's such a foreign world.
In social spaces, how my body just cringes. And I'm like, oh my God, my kids. I'm like, don't touch anything. It's crazy. That's like my first incident. I don't say it out loud, but I'm like, oh my God, no, don't. Let's get out of here, right? And you know, when they're outside and on the farm or whatever, I'm like, dive in there, go for it. You know, there's something instinctual as an individual, as a human being, or as a primal human being, maybe, that what I feel is good, what I know is good.
Yeah, it's that instinct coming back. So let's talk a little bit about the same, you know, even earlier than when like Shivambu and Cryo came into my community with Body Thrive as it was becoming Club Thrive. Intermittent fasting, like I started noticing that I was, you know, trained as an Ayurvedic medicine practitioner where there's a lot of rules around food and a lot of rules around eating. And I just found that like in general, if people could fast long enough that their metabolic capabilities would improve to the point where they had much less food sensitivities, like they had less allergies and they had fewer issues with constipation, bloating, etc. Less issues, you know, like just less obsession around like, what am I going to eat? And then less of like the driving everyone else in their life crazy with like, I can't eat this and I can't eat that. And, you know, like the whole identity as eater, we'll call it identified. Forget about gender identity. We'll talk about eater identity. You know, and it was kind of driving me nuts, just being people coming to me like, I don't know what to eat. And I'm like, then don't eat until you instinctually
know what to eat.
Yes, exactly. Then just fast until you know, because that, again, that primal fire, that Agni, that is again linked to sense of smell, like what smells good. It's linked to eyesight, what looks good, to tongue, what tastes good, to touch, what like feels good, you know, to bring into my body. It's like that will wake up there. That's intelligence. That's the Veda of Ayurveda. That's the Vidya, the living wisdom. So as we became fluent in intermittent fasting and the different styles of intermittent fasting and intermittent fasting for body types, for vatas, pittas, and kaphas, and intermittent fasting for women, and just all of the different ways we could divide and conquer in a way this wild west of intermittent fasting. And this is before it became like, you know, on the shelves at Whole Foods. This was like we were maybe a bit more premature to that. Those eating issues and food issues started to alleviate, and people naturally found their fasting rhythm. And then later we went more to fast mimicking diet and 72-hour water fast as a way to reset or to detox. That to me were actually much simpler than the way I was trained in Ayurvedic medicine and detox. But at the root of it had the same philosophy of let the Agni, let the digestive fire do the work. Like it's the digestive fire that does the work of detoxification. It's cleansing by burning, essentially. So I just love to hear what you noticed and what you saw and what, because you're helping me with Primal Ayurveda and detox conversations, as well as the April Detox and Club Thrive. And I'd just love to hear a little bit about your path, your own personal, like what's working for you and what changed.
I think that the most important piece for myself was at the beginning, I think it has a bit more of a gung ho, even like desire to like, okay, well, I'm going to fast from this time to this time. And suddenly there was like, I guess like some trauma behind food, right? And through the detoxes with Sarita, one of the mentors that was there, she brought me through ancestral healing. Mm-hmm. So anyways, healing one of those traumas, my relationship to food, is that. And then second thing in response to myself, their reaction to food was actually just to let go and to be like, okay, well, when am I hungry? Like if I not wait until I'm hungry at 12 to eat, right? I think that we all kind of start there somewhere. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden, just kind of seeing where my fire was very alive and well. And I remember doing that for the first time. I was like, hey, I'm going to wait and see where my digestive fire, where is it that like you were talking about, that desire, that intelligence is very like, oh my God, I need this right now. I need this. So this feels good. This feels great. This smell I want more of. I remember it was like 36 hours. And it was just like hopping onto a wave and just letting myself ride on it. It wasn't like forcing myself, but being controlling. Mm-hmm. And that's like one piece of advice. It's just to kind of see where your digestion is, where the Agni, the fire, the intelligent is really thriving, and that can offer me proper information of what my bodily needs are. And through guiding people through detoxing and fasting for so long, it's a process for sure, because a lot of people have this healing piece that needs to be done either through their own parents or their ancestors, that I find super important to look at, because there is this piece of being traumatized with food. I know my grandparents, they lost everything on their farm at one point. They freaked out. Lots of trauma. My dad said he'll always remember that suddenly they didn't have that much money. They didn't even know if they would have enough money to feed they had 9 kids? Yeah. And so I went back to that. Yeah. And then that's when yeah, and I feel like crying of joy, because I remember like cracks on my tongue actually disappeared when I actually knocked on that door and healed that piece, that finally I knew that I would be okay without food, and that I can dive in deeper into my cells that were holding on to this old piece that really wasn't mine, but that was mine, was mine, I guess now. So now, like fasting coming to now, fasting is very common and it's easy now. But there was that process that I needed to go to get to where I am now. So it's not necessarily something that is done overnight. That's one piece I know about fasting.
Well, and all the primal habits. It's like therapy. It's like starting to drop on your hand or drop up a nostril and just see that help my sinus.
Yeah, for sure. But fasting was so profound in what it did to me that it really sticks out, and that now it's so much easier She's like, yeah, okay. Like sometimes like cryotherapy, like cold water, I'm like, hey, just do it, you know? But with fasting, there's this peace that's just a lot more peaceful now and a lot more easeful. And even my child, like when he's eating too much, he's like, oh, I think I need to take a pause now. You know, so there's this peace now that's being transmitted to him that he has capacity. It's okay without food.
Yeah.
And that without food is actually nourishing.
Yeah. Something else happens.
Yeah.
I had a similar, I would think it was also with, I'm trying to think, I think it was also with Sarita. Oh, just Sarita. There's a podcast on it. And we did 2 episodes.
I remember that.
I went right there as well. Like my grandfather was kicked out of the house at about 11 because there wasn't enough food in Russia. There's just not enough, like there just wasn't enough, like there wasn't
Yep.
food. And so it was like you had to leave because there was no, and so that
Wow.
eating, that need to fill, like that healing had to take place for me to not have that need to overeat anymore. And it was a very slow process of healing from that. But it's cool now that like I have no reflex to overeat anymore. It's just doesn't exist. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what it is,
Yeah, for myself either. And I think that yeah, it was a slow healing piece for me too.
So that my guess is that's like cultural, right? It's like if you haven't been through that yet, to the ancestors that were starving, because everyone has ancestors that were starving, most likely. Uh, that it's like, oh, that's just a huh. And then I just want to second that, like raising children, because we eat as a family, we eat 1 meal a day, and so it's not like there's not food around or people don't eat other meals or snack or whatnot, but like it's pretty easy for my teenage daughter to get into a natural intermittent fasting based on her activity level, based on what's going on, based on how she wants to look and feel. Like there's just so much more control than this sort of artificial like 3 meals a day and then all of the sort of commotion and food waste that can go with that. As and I'm not suggesting this for young children, but just as like people become adults, there should just be a lot more fluidity with that natural fasting rhythm that your son already has.
Yeah. But once again, it was through asking questions. I'm like, are you hungry in your mouth or are you hungry in your belly? And he was like, oh, I'm hungry in my mouth. And I'm like, well, if you want to eat, there's food, right? There was that. Now I'm at that piece now of like, well, I trust you. If you want to eat to fill up your mouth, well, food's there. But more often than so, he will not eat. He's gonna wait until he's like hungry really in his belly. And I think it's through those questions that allows them to explore more their needs, and just for him to know that I trust him, because that's the most important part for myself, is the relationship that I have with my child more than anything.
Yeah.
That is open, there's that trust, and that he can always come back, we can always have this discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Explore. Yeah. I was talking to my daughter about body type the other day, just so that she could understand more of, now that she's grown, like what it's like to be kapha and what we know is easier for kaphas in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like a few, again, not necessarily like right, wrong, good, bad, but just like a few things to tune into.
Yeah.
See if that is her experience. It's so empowering, and it's not like any of you guys who are like putting this on a pedestal, like you can just kick it out and get back on the ground, on the earth again. Right? It's just, yeah, it's just part of what happens. So we're going towards the April detox as a group in
Yeah.
Thrive. How has like seasonal detox like affected your kids or family, or what's normal and what's
Well, it's fairly normal. My ex, we live together. I mean, he does seasonal detoxing, but my son, I did, because I've been doing like a liver cleanse every month now since November, December, October, since October. And so we are starting on Thursday our first liver detox together, and he's 10. Yeah, because he wants to. And I'm like, okay, well, this implies this and this. And when we have to start is this, and you're going to be going to this event, so you might want to eat this. And, so he's getting ready. So, and, my kids are full on to the dandelion in the spring, and, they forage. But I mean, just the fact that my son's like, okay, mom, like, I didn't say anything. He was like, Mom, I think I need to do a liver cleanse. I can feel my liver. Like, I've taught him to massage his liver and different points on his body, right? Because there's meridians. So there's been that waking up within him. And him coming towards me being like, okay, Mom, I think I'm ready. And I'm like, okay, hold on, am I ready? Like, and for him to do it by himself, I'm like, eh. So I want to accompany him. So we're getting ready and see how far we go. It might be bumpy. I mean, I'm hoping it's bumpy so we can learn, right? And real probably bumpy. So that's where I'm at with like cleansing my family. I mean, and specifically like seasonal cleansing, it's always there's just always this adaptation within the seasons because we have our own garden, we have and in the fall we have our own, harvest for the winter. So the kids are aware of like to pick and to prepare for winter, and we eat what comes out of the garden and what comes up in the spring. They're like, oh my God, dandelions again in the smoothie or in the salad. And then when they eat it, they're like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I think that just goes to show, like, I was pretty stoked, like, when we were going to talk today and my son coming up with this. I was just like, oh my God, I can't wait to talk about this with Kate. So it's present, and it's just, once again, like, it's obviously not coming out of thin air.
Yeah.
But it's just coming with ease.
Right.
So
right.
It's coming.
Most other moms listening are like, my 10-year-old son never said that, or daughter never said that to me. So
for sure. I know, right? Yeah. So there's just this, and yeah, like, of course, to a large degree, I'm proud and I'm happy, obviously, right? But it was really, for me, just stopping to control when my kids were younger, to really just offer space and curiosity to come in with questions to my kids about it.
Yeah. I think too, just like being able to talk about challenging things, whether it's like the smell of urine and urine therapy, or whether it's the like fasting and fast mimicking diet or liver detox. Like there's a number of questions that I find that like the more primal we get in general, like the less afraid we are of having difficult or challenging or critical or uncomfortable or sensitive conversation. I think Jordan Peterson, he really nails it when he, has this, I think it's in his 12 Rules for Life, his first popular book, not his first book, but his first popular book, where he has a rule around, not letting your children do things that that you don't like, or something like that, where it's like that are annoying. Because if they're annoying to you, they're probably going to be annoying to the other relationships that they're in further down the line. And there's something in there about like being curious and really leaning into what is the crux, what is interesting, what is challenging. That primal, like the more primal our habits, the more we're not afraid of those conversations at all. We're just like, they just happen, and we trust into the like, oh, this conversation needs to happen next. Like this is coming up right now. So like now. Like, so now we'll have a challenging conversation, or now we'll talk about something that's edgy, or now I feel like doing a liver detox.
Yeah, for sure.
I hate to say it, but I have got to jump. I have another thing.
Oh, good. This was good.
I've so enjoyed connecting with you, Lynne Talifer, and thank you so much for being a mentor in the Club Thrive community and helping me with the April Detox. Mwah.